moles. 1 mole of any substance is the mass of the substance in gram that contains a certain number of particles, which is the Avogadro number. The Avogadro number is 6.02 times 10 to 23. So any substance that contains that amount or that number of particles, the weight of or the mass of that substance equals 1 mole. The particles here refers to atoms, ions, or molecules, depending on the nature of the substance. So the mass of 1 mole of any substance will equal either the relative atomic mass or the relative formula mass of that substance, depending whether it's an atom or is it a molecule. Some examples. So 1 mole of hydrogen molecule, which is 2 atoms of hydrogen, will weigh 2 grams of hydrogen. 1 mole of iron will weigh 56 grams of iron. And 1 mole of sodium carbonate would weigh the exact same relative formula mass of sodium carbonate in gram. So the relative formula mass of sodium carbonate is 106. So 106 grams of sodium carbonate would be 1 mole of that substance. How to calculate the number of moles? You can calculate the number of moles of a certain mass of any substance if you know the relative atomic mass or the relative formula mass of that substance using this equation. Number of moles will equal the mass in gram over the relative atomic mass or the relative formula mass, depending on whether we are calculating the number of moles of an atom or for a compound. You can use the formula triangle to calculate any of these 3 variables, which are number of moles, mass, and relative formula mass or relative atomic mass. So here M at the top is the mass in gram, MR is the relative formula mass or relative atomic mass if we are talking about atoms, and N is the number of moles. So an example, how many moles are there in 66 grams of carbon dioxide? Now we have the mass, which is 66 grams, and we can calculate the relative formula mass for carbon dioxide, which is 44. Now we can calculate the number of moles, which equals mass over mR, so 66 over 44 will equal 1.5 moles. You can rearrange the equation to calculate any of these 3 variables. So you can also calculate the number of moles of an element within a compound if you know how many atoms of that particular element in the compound. For example, carbon dioxide consists of or formed of 1 atom of carbon and 2 atoms of oxygen. So 1 mole of carbon, 1 mole of carbon dioxide will contain only 1 mole of carbon. However, it will contain 2 moles of oxygen because it has 2 atoms of oxygen. You can calculate the mass of a particular element or of a particular atom within a compound if you know the number of moles of that particular compound. For example, what would be the mass of carbon in 4 moles of carbon dioxide? 4 moles of carbon dioxide will contain 4 moles of carbon. Now, the relative atomic mass of carbon is 12. So we can use the formula triangle now to calculate the mass because the mass will equal the relative atomic mass of carbon times the number of moles. And we know that the number of moles is 4 because there are 4 moles of carbon, and the relative atomic mass of carbon is 12. So 4 times 12 is 48 grams.